It's March 12th, 2026, and welcome to episode 121 of the Driving Forward podcast. Whether you're joining us live or listening on one of our 18 platforms, including Wreaths Across America Radio, where we broadcast every Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Central Time, we appreciate your support. Next week, we are at the Technology and Maintenance Council annual conference in Nashville. This is a big one. It's usually like 5,000 to 6,000 people. So Susan Mayo and myself will be there, along with a ton of partners, all the OEMs, all the truck stops, et cetera, et cetera. It's a great show. It'll be in Nashville. If you're around, reach out to us. We'd love to meet with you. The following week, we're at the Mid-America Truck Show in Louisville. Matt's is still a TBD on our show, but you know we're going to come up with something while we're there. There's no doubt about it. I got to reach out to Wreaths Across America. They have a booth with a podcast area, and then lock in with our friends at Logistics Lounge. But if you haven't noticed, I've been around and been bouncing all over the country here lately. I haven't actually been posting a lot of that because there's just not a lot of time in the day. So once again, next week, the TMC, we're going to run a podcast there as well. We'll probably collect a few interviews throughout the week and post them up on Thursday. At Matt's, we're not sure. Following Matt's, this is what we're up to over the next few weeks. So Decision 44 and TTC will be at Broker Carrier Summit, and then ATA mid-year. We'll put up who's going to be where at some point here in the near future, but we are busy. If you're in Minneapolis, don't forget tonight is a Freight Movement Prevents another Twin Cities Transportation Club gathering at the Forgotten Star Brewing Company in Fridley, Minnesota. It's from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. And I think we've been called out to wear our best sneakers. So I think Chris Sonic is going to put something up, and I'm going to respond with my crazy color ones, and we'll see how it all goes. So if you got some cool sneakers, put them on. We'd love to see you tonight between 4:30 and 6:30. I should be there at 4:30 sharp, I hope, as opposed to the last couple. I've either not made them or I've been late. So, ladies and gentlemen, freight fanatics and supply chain savages, get on your feet, because stepping back into the spotlight today is not just another guest. She's a force in freight. She's the sharp-tongued shot caller, the headline hunter, the breaker of boring industry talk, and one of the most recognized voices in FreightTech. We'll talk more on that later. When the markets get messy, when fuel prices start climbing, when EDI, visibility, and supply chain chaos start making people sweat, she doesn't run from the fire. She walks straight into it with a microphone in one hand and a hot take in the other. Representing Orderful as Senior Manager of Communications and PR, she's here to separate signal from noise, call the market exactly like she sees it, and put the whole freight world on notice. So open your eyes and ears, because business is about to pick up. Welcome to the show, the queen of FreightTech, Grace Sharkey. Welcome back, Grace. I told you I would one up the next one.
Always a great opener, and my ego doesn't need it, Nate. So thank you so much.
Your ego needs it. I don't know about need it, but it'll consume it.
Exactly. Happy to be on, though. It's a exciting time in freight. Markets bouncing back, and interested to see how players deal with it, whether they're brokers, carriers, and how they're managing this kind of turn.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge shift. We were talking about it a lot at TCA. I think there's a lot of things going on, and even you look at the narrative that we had at Manifest compared to now, and it's significantly different. And Manifest was just a little over a month ago.
Yeah.
It almost feels like a different world over the last 5 weeks. So it's kind of wild. But speaking of Manifest, how did you like that show this year?
Well, it was the first time that I got to attend it as a exhibitor. Usually I go and I'm there to write stories and meet new companies, and I still got to do a lot of that this time around. But it was very interesting to sit back and play a part in it and almost focus on it from a true marketing standpoint, right? And see what's helpful and what's not, and where to put your dollars at a show like that. So generally, I mean, I think Pam said this was up to close to like 6,000, 7,000 people, I think, this year compared to previous years. You can definitely feel that impact. But also at the same time, I noticed maybe a little bit of a change in the type of technology companies that we saw, especially again from my perspective, going in as someone who's not only trying to look for new customers, but also look for new partnerships and platforms to integrate with. There was more than ever before to choose from. And a lot of focus on connectivity and integrations in general. And I think what's cool about that, and really what Orderful has always built itself on, is this, I hate using the buzzword of like plug and play, but we really are starting to move to this type of less friction, easy to integrate, easy to onboard type of environment. And we can get into this more, but it's just good to go to that show and see kind of the market agreeing that there's a real big technological gap in this industry right now, and a really big need to catch up, and also leverage, like, I don't want to just say the AI tools, but like these new modern technologies that are easily accessible, not just for the regular consumer, but for everyone that we manage and technology teams themselves. And how quickly can you update your systems to, or even your business models, right? To bend to a situation where, like, for instance, in EDI, where a lot of maybe the mapping and network building and integration building can be done quite easily by someone who's has enough tech experience but also knows how to use Claude or these other coding engines, right? So yeah, it was a great, I always loved Manifest because it's like a start of the year and showcases, I think, what we expect to see throughout 2026 or the rest of the year in general. So for us as a tech vendor, it's a really great booster for what we plan to do for the rest of the year too.
I have a similar assessment to it, but it was large. Of course, I was hobbling around on that foot, so I didn't really get through the expo hall as much as what I wanted to. But there's a lot of newer companies. So a lot of newer companies, a lot of companies I didn't know. To layer it year over year, there's a lot of change from last year. And then a lot of people doing similar things. So we'll see where the market kind of comes out there, and who sort of locks in on whatever table stake they're putting down. But I imagine that a lot of the companies that were there this year may not be back next year. So,
well, to that point, and something I'm interested in kind of hearing from your end to being a part of the technology journey, it's interesting seeing this market flip and, knowing all these AI agents that are out there bidding on freight and working to lock down, capacity for loads. Most of those have come out of a certain type of market. So I'm very interested in how those agents are going to perform in the complete opposite conditions.
So I'm going to open. So I've been predicting this for 3 years or more. Yeah. Since 3 years, because that's really when really 2 years is when it started pushing. So the agents started pushing and we started seeing these use cases. But I'm also going to call out the expansion of personnel too. So which you wanted to talk about that, but that's also something the personnel I've been talking about for 3+ years since this downturn went long. And that companies need to equip themselves to handle this shift in the market. And many of them are not. We've looked at how do we become the cheapest, not how do we become the best. And, bidding on scenarios that you're not going to be able to move as a broker, or fast bidding on something that's going to leave margin on the table as a carrier, it's just not wise. You need it to. There's nothing wrong with something that's automating bids. Anyone that sat in a bid table, and 20 years ago, we would sit in a conference room with, 7,000 lanes and go through each one of them with Excel spreadsheets and figure out our costs and whatnot. It'd take us a week. And, that's how the bid process went 20 years ago. But today, being able to move that much faster, but it's not always about the race to the bottom of the cost. And I think a lot of people are aligned in that way, and it's going to be a rude awakening.
Yeah, because I know a lot of these agents they're really there to solve a math equation, right? Like they're given a certain range of where they're allowed to go. And I would love, you get a lot of stats out of these players, right? I would love to see a stat at the end of March of how often that got pushed to a human, because it was just like couldn't figure out the math to make some of these lanes work.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what that ends up being. And as far as the bidding process, what I would be curious on what's going to be given back. So
yes.
that I think is probably the more, we're just not able to service this lane from a non-asset perspective. Many of the asset-based fleets will continue to service it because they don't want to, take that hit, and they'll renegotiate it on the next bid if the customer brings it up, or they're going to initiate that renegotiation at some point. But they're not just going to drop a customer on their head unless they're a small fleet that would do that. So
for sure.
But it'll be interesting to see what and how those solutions end up being adjusted. The other thing that I get a little worried about is staffing and kind of the youthfulness of our brokerages. So I think there was a post recently, and I should have had that up in front of me, but you kind of called it out. Also something I've been saying for years. They're used to working with tools that make them go faster. They're used to moving freight. They're not used to arguing with a fleet on rate. Or an owner operator, and they're now in scenarios that they weren't before. And now they're going to have to fight for freight as well, because a carrier is the cheapest one to move freight in a carrier market. Some companies don't want to do that. They still want to work with their 3PL or brokerage, and that's perfectly fine. That's what they're there for. But the carriers are going to figure out and maintain service. So we haven't seen that in a long time. Long time, pre-2019, really. So this is we have not seen a strong carrier market in a long time. I'm not sure we're in one. Actually, I know we're not in one, but we're certainly moving in that direction very slowly. So
I would say too, right? Depends on like the type of freight. If you're my roots are in like mostly open deck flatbed type of stuff. Like, can you imagine right now, like outbounding those companies? Like,
why do you think flatbed's so hot right now?
It's kind of tough. Like, I think I would hope that that there's more manufacturing and home building and more of that happening. Just personally, as someone who's looking to buy a home that's not overvalued, I'm seeing trends like that, and I'm like, oh, maybe here it is. I also think that I wouldn't be surprised if with the early weather conditions, if maybe some of those projects were like put on pause for a little bit during early winter and finally starting to come about. You oftentimes do see too, like are like a bunch of flatbed companies coming out of that wintertime kind of vacation they take and all jumping into the market at the same time. I think that potentially that mixing in with market conditions could be happening there. Whether to, depending on the product, some of it can go on an open deck carrier compared to like always being in a van. So there's different types of, I think, maybe reasonings for it. I think the odd thing is I haven't really seen the manufacturing like numbers maybe to like combine that theory. Unless they're like being hidden away somewhere, which I wouldn't understand why this administration would want to hide statistics like that at all, in the economy that we're sitting in now. But I think, we'll continue to watch it. I guess that wouldn't make sense. But part of me is wondering is like, we deal with I think it's easier to get CDL drivers to drive bad CDL holders to drive vans, and maybe it is for flatbeds, right? So where we
true,
yeah. So like, right, if like I'm not a good driving, guess what? I probably don't also want to get out and strap things down. So maybe the issues that we've seen from more of those type of like the CDL problems that we see out there in that narrative hasn't trickled into open deck as much, so that just the capacity hasn't blown up like we've seen in the other trailer types, right, or modes. But I think that's what's interesting is like hopefully we'll start to see a little bit more of data that supports a lot of that movement. It could also be too like with the tariff situation kind of, I don't want to say normalizing, but becoming a little bit normal for buyers themselves. Like, are we seeing kind of that tariff scare dwindling a little bit in those verticals that would go on flatbeds? But I've seen the numbers. I've heard people outside of the numbers. That's the one thing I like to see too. Is like we can have the DATs, the freight waves, like post all the data they want, but like, are we actually seeing people posting on Twitter and LinkedIn of having those issues in house? And I would say I'm hearing more of that coming from open deck brokerages over time. It's like, yeah, no, we're feeling these rates. And hey, I love that because my favorite trailer type is an RGN. And if those guys are out there just having a time of their life, then all for them and happy for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, I'm not sure why flatbed all of a sudden went crazy, and it has me thinking that it's probably not going to stay this way forever. When you look at dry van refrigerated's doing better, especially on the contract side. A lot of discussions there are solid. A lot of things are going in the right direction. Once the refrigerated carriers start hauling all refrigerated freight again, and they get out of the dry van play, that will actually help dry van. So, that's sort of historically, when I look back through the beginning of time when I started in this industry, that's the cycle that we would see. The refrigerated fleets would sort of dry up a little bit, and then that would impact dry van even more because the refrigerated fleets, when the rates come down, start pulling on the dry van freight. So, but the flatbed usually lived in its own world, and it's definitely living in its own world right now. So, but no one can say definitively this is what's happening. Maybe the data is just not getting to us fast enough. But yeah, who knows? So, I mean, what do you think? We're entering a smarter chapter in freight, or do you think that we've just gotten so desperate that companies and everyone's starting to finally shift or adapt?
It's I would like to say like we have reached a smarter time. I think that we are becoming technologically smarter for sure. I have recently seen posts though of like shippers asking why rates are so high while at the same time completely understanding the fuel situation. And
Right.
so like I don't if shippers aren't able to wrap their heads around that right now, that doesn't seem smarter. It's if I would this was like one of my favorite parts of like running a brokerage is that like if I was filling up my own tank, I was like, God, this sucks, but more revenue, like
Yeah.
you think a shipper would be like, oh, this sucks, and probably reaching my shipment pricing goals is going to suck too. You think that would go hand in hand, but it sounds like shippers are still a little bit oblivious to that. But to their point, I think what a lot of big technology providers in the space have been preaching over the past 5 years is, oh, we have the tools to help you see this proactively. And then when they're realizing how difficult it is to truly proactively see a black swan event, or in the case like we're talking about right now, flatbeds just driving through the ceiling, but we really don't know why, then it's like, okay, well, then what was the point of this investment on being able to see down the line, right, of what my rates would be? So I bet I would assume that some of those technology companies, the ones that were, hey, we're going to help you see what's coming down the pipeline, and now I'm using those tools and I'm not saving a dime, and it's going back to the good old, oh, I can't find capacity in this Joe Schmo brokerage who's run by a mom and pop situation, is somehow finding it, like, or they're getting called out on that action in particular. So again, going back to like the AI agents and how they work in this environment, it's probably good that this situation is happening because they're going to learn where maybe their tech has some gaps.
Yeah, and you can't predict these odd, like you call black swan events. I mean, who was predicting Iran and that fuel was going to jump 96 cents in a week?
Yeah.
No one would have predicted that in January. So,
yeah.
And we still don't know what's going to happen there. I mean, we haven't had an odd fuel scenario in 4 years. So, and then prior to that, it was 14 years. It's 2008 that we had a huge spike. I mean, you get the rolling fuel cycle, and that's fairly predictable. But the big spikes, we just did our company update. We do a monthly company update where we get everybody together on a call, and you start looking at this. If this sustains, we have rarely ever seen anything close to a 96 cent in a week adjustment. But that is about $2,400 a month or $2,400 in a net 45 scenario. So if you're not factoring, it's going to take $2,400 in cash out of your pocket until you cash flow. So who's equipped to deal with that right now? No one. I mean, you can't predict that. So,
well, and the people that are struggling with those costs immediately are the ones who've already been trying to survive and the littlest margin to begin with, and that pain is just going to trickle into other places whether they want it or not. Brokerages, I'm looking at you, but yeah, the people are going to feel it first, as we all know, are going to be those carriers. And so
the cost per mile increase alone is, I mean, depending upon your fuel mileage, 12 to 16 cents a mile. I mean, that was not there yesterday and 7 days or a week ago or 10 days ago, and now it's there. So, and it's, I haven't looked today to see where the cost of oil is or where crude is at today, but if it still continue to come down a little bit or if it goes back up, but I mean, no one can predict a commodity when it really comes down to it, no matter what happens. I said a long time ago when I got into hedging fuel, when I was running a trucking company, we won and then we lost and then we won and we lost, and then you start realizing I'm not a commodities trader. And what am I doing here? All it takes is one huge loss and you're in a big bad way. So just play with the market condition the way it is. If I was if I could have predicted the cost of crude, I would have been in an entirely different industry. So making a lot more money. So, let's flip into, to kind of cap that one, some of the solutions that are out there, I can see them being in a little interesting spot. Especially on the buy sell side when you have no idea what's going to actually happen. So, but once you get it back to a normalized market, you're going to potentially have that. But we haven't seen those solutions in play in what, you or I might define as a normalized market. So we don't know what that's going to look like.
No.
Which, I had all these little bullet points that we chat about, and I've not asked any of the questions. We're just checking off all the boxes as we go. So
it is interesting though. I sit back and I wonder, like, right now, all those tools that were like, that auto like generate load lists and send out to carriers and like take their bit. Are they just like not getting answers right now? Like, because the trucks are covered and they're going to be covered. And I would assume if I was a shipper and I was kind of panicking right now, I'm not locking down your rate for just today, but I'm going to lock it down, right, for like the next couple of weeks, just to, especially with the guidance that we have received on what's happening or what we don't know what's happening in Iran. Like, so not only is that capacity probably gone today, it's probably gone tomorrow, and it's probably gone next week already. So it's like, it's going to be a brutal end of the quarter, right, for some of these brokers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The shippers I'm talking to are actually looking out a lot further than a few weeks. So they're figuring this is flipping. So that's the answer I'm getting. The question is how fast and how long. So, but you definitely are in a position to lock down contractual freight where you haven't been previously. So that's what I'm hearing from the shipper side. And right next to TCA, we had food shippers. So this year, so we got to kind of get some feedback from the folks over there. So you think tech has, we talked about, some of the tech that is supposed to fix this scenario. But do you think tech actually simplified the industry, or did we just create a layer of complexity that kind of increased costs?
Maybe at first, I think it definitely increased costs, but there's I've got a friend. I was gonna say I'm not gonna dox him. I'm not trying to dox him at all. I've got a friend who runs a freight brokerage, and I've been kind of making fun of him over the past year or so because of all the technological advancements he's made in that freight brokerage. He's literally hasn't had to really hire anyone in the roles that traditionally a freight brokerage would hire, right? Carrier reps, sales reps, etc. If anything, he's finding himself hiring more of these technological roles or people who can come in and find ways to optimize operations more so than already are. And that's being very successful for them too. Now, are they still dealing with market conditions? Yes. But dealing with those conditions without having to worry about continuing to add headcount in situations, or the opposite, he's able to move that headcount into positions that bring value, right? Is also positive too, because that's, I think, part of this conversation is of course, who you're letting go. But I think it's help simplify the parts of the job that, and I say this all the time, and I think I feel bad because I know there's probably people in these roles listening. It simplified the work that I think people were getting paid way too much money to do. Work that, some of the work that carrier reps or even sales reps have to do, right? Equivalent to really how Expedia took that role from trip bookers or what do you call them? It doesn't even exist anymore because you don't really need them, right? Vacation entities. And stuff.
Oh, you mean like a travel agent or something?
Yes, exactly. I couldn't even think.
They do exist still, but not as much.
They do, right? For this, especially for the specialized stuff, like you want like a real great trip planned out. That's who you go to, and I think I always look at that as that's how I feel that 3PLs will eventually get to. It's like, okay, if I do have someone that I'm talking to every day on my freight, it's probably them helping me plan out where my warehouses are slow loading, the more of the like actual true valuable lessons I think shippers are asking for from their logistics providers. But like the slanging of freight and the kind of the area that we like to make jokes about, right? Like Freight Caviar and all them posting, you know, about the like chewing tobacco, that like toxic environment.
Sure,
I think is just completely flipped on its head. And what I like about it, and talking to some of these organizations, is like they expect you now, if you do have a role like that, to be thinking about how to use modern tools inside your own job. And that's now a skill, right? You can't just like come in with a no education level I think that we're able to have before. Now we're looking for people who know how to use Tableau, know how to use some of these automation tools, and can apply it to their everyday job. That's, I think, going to become a heavy skill that this industry starts hiring more. And I keep my nephews and cousins, like, I'm constantly shoving that stuff in their face, because I think that's we're going to see that generation help my generation and maybe even the Gen X's cover that gap of learning these tools and putting them into modern day business practices. So I think that we've seen those jobs simplify themselves in like how that work's being done. But I think and I think this is the exciting lesson we're going to learn, whether I'm right or wrong, has that nuance completely been covered by this technology? And the nuance being what exactly is happening in the market today, and that flip, and the ability to chameleon itself into a different market condition, because we really haven't seen it. And I mean, I started FreightWaves right when the FreightTech started to boom. And so I know for a fact that a lot of these founders, who even at some point I questioned because of their lack of transportation and logistics knowledge, I think they could get away with that lack of in the market they've experienced in the last 5 years. I think this is where they're going to really learn where that slanging freight trueness comes from, and how do you mend your technology to deal with that? How do you mend the technology to, for instance, if it's a shipper technology, like, is it working when all of a sudden now we need to start thinking, can this go on a flatbed or a different type of trailer, because that's all I have available in my network right now. So yeah, I think that we simplified the. Am I allowed to swear on this show?
Well, you're not supposed to.
Okay, BS. I'll say the BS. Good. I mean, this is a Blythe show. Okay, good.
We end up on terrestrial radio.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We love Reese Across America for the Veterans. The BS. So
yes.
BS. I think the BS has been simplified. I think we've gotten that. And if you haven't gotten it out, oh boy, are you behind? But now it's about the true nuance. And I bet you the people who are buying technology in true partnership, right? Where you're like talking with their teams, how that technology is working inside and out. I think they'll get through it better, because they'll be able to talk to those partners more and say, no, this is the nuance you're missing. This is what we need to fix. But those who are just, kind of onboarding new customers, to be honest with you, probably just meeting the goals that their investors kind of asked for. This is where you're going to wish those partnerships existed a little bit more.
So I'm going to cap what you just said, and then we'll go do a break. And then I got something special after the break that I didn't tell you about. But so I think if we're truly going through a market shift, I think there's going to be, if you survive the flip to the new market, and that's an if, probably like we haven't seen before. So at least in the FreightTech environment, or even on the brokerage side, we've never had a cycle like this before. We've also never changed cycles by eliminating capacity. It's always been a demand scenario. So that's why I'm all skittish on this, is we're eliminating capacity to impact our market shift. And there's no economic indicator that says we should be flipping the way that we're flipping right now, but we are. So just because it's never happened doesn't mean that it can't. But if you survive the flip, you've streamlined all of these solutions. AI is real. There's plenty of great products out there that can impact your bottom line on a variety of different levels. But we're then doubling down on relationships again. So what's strange is you're freeing up all these people, and in some cases, companies are removing those that they don't want to keep. But in other cases, you point them towards that relationship side, whether that's additional technology you should be deploying, or customer facing, or truck facing, or truck finders, whatever the case might be, to build up your carrier relations. That's the important thing. There's a lot of people who didn't take that focus, and then now there's a lot of people that are taking that focus. So I'm in agreement on it. I think there is some additional costs there, but if you've deployed technology properly and been aware of the solutions that work and don't work, and kind of made sure you weren't paying for the solutions that don't work, then on the flip of this, you're coming out probably in a better spot than you went in. So with that being said, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, and I got a video from a couple years ago. I've told you about this video, but it was from Manifest a couple years ago, and I've got you in a mirror just dancing it up. So, we'll be back in a little over a minute, and we'll see what we have to see. So,
if your fleet's downtime looks like chaos, you're missing out on GLCS. In the time-critical world of trucking and logistics, every minute counts. Meet GLCS, your expert partner in managed IT and technology services. We integrate seamlessly with your team, bringing seasoned IT professionals with deep trucking and logistics expertise. Imagine your software updates running smoothly, complex issues resolved quickly, and operations humming with efficiency. GLCS has your back. Our support doesn't just fix problems. It prevents them with our industry connections and proactive approach. We keep your trucks rolling and your brokers working. Think of us as the added resource your company needs to unleash its full potential. Visit glcs.net today and keep your business driving forward. GLCS, where efficiency meets expertise.
And we're back. So this is Manifest. This is 3 manifests ago at the end. Was that Nelly? Who was that? Yeah. Okay. So now the first part of the video is just going to be kind of the setup of what things were going on, and then the second part of the video, I zoom in on 3 people. We'll see if we can see all 3 people, but you're definitely one of them. So hold on. So there we see Grace, and we got Blythe next to Grace, and then there's Jane right behind her. So, I wish the camera would have picked them up. That picture right there, I have to show it. It's got you and your wife. So,
Oh my God. So good.
I didn't even know you were in that.
Yeah.
I was watching it one day. I'm like, oh, that's Grace. That's Blythe. And then Bane's right behind you too. So
yeah, that's Neo. Fun fact.
Neo, that's
he threw me his sweat towel. So I had his sweat towel and I was carrying that around Vegas like all night long and kept like running to bachelorette parties and being like, do you guys want to smell Neo?
So do you still have the sweat towel?
Yes, I do have the sweat towel. It's downstairs. My goal is to like put in a frame. Just like Flow Rider's shoe, if you remember that, that's right there. I got that last year. But what was he gonna say? The funny thing, yeah. Oh, and then after I think it was like 4 hours later, I got on a plane to Hawaii. So that was a great day.
Yeah, you were in that checked a lot of boxes just right in a row. So I remember that. And then the next year, didn't you go were you going somewhere else, or was maybe that was another conference?
I always go back to Florida usually instead of Michigan when I go to Manifest to avoid the cold. So yeah, that's probably what you're thinking. Yeah.
So it was the following year that with Flow that we got stuck in the airport for half a day.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, back to our conversation, or continuing on with the conversation. So let's talk a little bit about EDI. EDI's, been around since the 60s. I think I'm accurate on that, like 1965.
Yeah.
Something like that. So definitely. Now, when you say EDI, you think this old legacy technology is really not anymore. It might be. There still might be some of the old stuff from the 90s still floating around. We still see that every once in a while. But it continues to hang on, and it's modernized itself in a lot of different ways to where, people think EDI, they think old, and that's not necessarily what it is. But it still is kind of the center of a lot of headaches in the industry. Why do you think it's been that way, and what are we doing about it as an industry or as Orderful to make it less messy?
Totally. Well, you're right. I think a lot of people, because of APIs these days, are like, how does EDI still exist? Well, listen, first of all, we use APIs to make EDI less painful. So I think sometimes when people bring that up, I'm like, well, we're not ignoring that APIs exist. We're leveraging those, right, to bring this tech into a more modern era. Now, I think what Orderful is doing better than most, though, is focusing on the real problem and headaches that people get from it, which is how often that mapping breaks and how much of a struggle it is to remap and get everything back on schedule, you could say, after something does break, after a partner changes their guidelines, and realizing how much of a domino effect that has on all of your connections. And that's like, we've recently released our latest version of our technology, which is Mosaic. And a big part of what Mosaic is doing is using language models really to not only catch when, let's say, a shoe company is selling to Foot Locker, right? And if Foot Locker changed their guidelines, well, that shoe company would have to fix their mapping along with everyone else, right, attached to Foot Locker per se. And the way our system works now is the moment that our full network sees that someone in the network has changed their guidelines, we then go and we immediately change the guidelines for everyone. So what does that do? One of two things. One, that you don't have to keep up with every single one of those, and that we're fixing that before sending anything through that API, so there is no chargeback and there is no error. But two, it's also a technology that's future-proofing itself per se, because as you grow, and let's say you're not in Foot Locker today, but you wanted to, then that when you connect or need to connect to Foot Locker, that onboarding is going to take very little time because we've already corrected any guideline issues and have learned from it per se within our network. And so I think using more modern technology to keep up with that, we also heavily use AI to keep up with any sales or onboarding issues. So that kind of feeds with itself as well. But I think a big kicker that I'm noticing even more so, less from like our retail customers, but even more so from like our transportation brokerage customers, is just the lack of visibility or control. Honestly, to a point where I think some providers actually kind of lean on that a little bit more. Like if you can't see in and manage in, then there's this service that we can sell you on, and you can look at some of these legacy players who are trading. And if you look at their stock, it's collapsing on itself because they've been betting on those services, where we actually are like betting against having to provide those services with the way that technology is enabling people to even build their own connections into our system. Why am I paying you $5,000 a month to service this when I can actually probably use Claude and a couple of my younger generation employees to build this stuff themselves? And so because we haven't focused on just that service aspect to grow our company in particular, we're starting to beat out a lot of those legacy players that are just like stuck in that do best what's best for stakeholders in general, right? And we love that black box. We think in this day and age, like you should be able to monitor all of your trading partners and see errors instantly and what failed and why it failed and how we fixed it. And I can't tell you how many people we talk to, especially in logistics, who don't even realize like that's an option that they could have. It's something that we've, they've been a customer for quite a long time, but KBX was like one of the first people that we really made sure this was available to, and that's brought down tens of hours that save per carrier that they're adding because of that visibility into what's happening behind the scenes and not having to wait for this traditional back and forth messaging that people are used to. So I think that's like, I'm really excited for our growth at this point right now because we've made that bet since inception. It's something that Eric has always thought as a technologist, like this, it's not just easier because we're using APIs, it's easier because of how the technology is self-healing itself in real time. And because I think a lot of legacy players have avoided acknowledging that nuance and change in technology, that people are willing to say, I know this potentially could be a headache, and we won't make it a headache, but that's what a lot of people look at changing EDI, just like changing an ERP. But even from an ERP level, I think we're getting to a point where people don't want to feel like they're handcuffed to their management system. When I can easily, it's not the perfect example, but like in today's world, if Uber can't pick me up, and then fine, I'll just download Lyft really quick and see what Lyft can do. And that's, I think that's kind of like what we're looking at in a transformation of technology in our space, is like that whole like debt to like the TMS that you're using, that shouldn't have to be there. And I think technologists in this space are catching on. Technologists, not only technologists that have come from outside the space, but those who've been in it for a while and are starting to learn the tech, and obviously partner with people like you, Nate, who know what the future of technology should look like for this industry. But just acknowledging that change that we're seeing before our competitors, I think, is really starting to pay off. And I think in general, like an EDI, I think the industry can just honestly do better for its customers and not have to just like handcuff them to this like service contract that they feel afraid to leave, when those services can actually be like very easily replicated nowadays.
So I agree with all points. I'm going to call out a couple of things. So yes, Claude and a skilled person can do lots of things. I've got friends. I've actually picked up a few things. I'm now, I can now write code. I don't know how to write, but it writes it for me. But if you have somebody who has some level of aptitude and awareness, you can build those API to API connections, potentially even more than that. But you called out something earlier where when it changes, and companies change, especially various companies, they change their API all the time, and they don't. Lots of times they'll let you know, sometimes they don't, and then you get to figure out. And as a company that has a large component of integrations, that's what we end up doing for a lot of our customers, is managing complex APIs and integration. So we don't typically get into like an EDI scenario, but we're getting more into like driver workflow and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But that being said, that's one thing. The other side is that decoupling of the tech, and I think you see a lot of legacy players in freight tech starting to really sort of reinvent themselves. And the problem is they're a little bit of turning the Titanic, but some of them started a long time ago. Some of them are just starting now. And I've talked with almost every one of them now and basically said, hey, listen, you guys need to get rid of this term legacy or that in a lot of cases they have great products that are able to decouple and work with anyone and everyone and be at least more advanced. And they have the relationships to do it. So, that's, I think, nobody thinks of Microsoft as a legacy technology.
Yeah.
It's not. It's one of the oldest software companies out there today that we work with and the level that we work with, but we don't call it legacy. So, and that's because they've done a great job of modernizing everything as they go through it. So I think that the TMS players and some of the larger solutions need to take that practice going forward, or they're going to get kind of left in the dust. So the landscape will definitely change. So I appreciate you tackling that use case. It's one. So the other point I was going to say before I move on to the next subject is, not only are you looking at a reduction in headcount, you're looking at more accurate customer scorecards, which means more freight if you're a good performer.
Yeah.
And that is as important, if not more important, than headcount reduction. So you're going to look at, I can't tell you how many customers of ours we go in and we look at their customer scorecard, and it's, they're getting scored poorly because they're submitting data because a truck shows up late, even though it wasn't late. And then, how do you correct that, or how do you hold that and not send it out? Those processes are important, but it needs to be extremely clean and scalable. We're also seeing customers that have in the past 5 or 6 trading partners, and now today they're having 50 or 60 because everyone's requiring that visibility layer, which is going to also, then we can, I think that's another podcast if we want to go down the how it's going to impact visibility as companies continue to go direct. So so a few minutes left. So is this the moment? I want to go back to the brokerage side so a little bit. Is this the moment where brokerages are finding out whether they actually have carrier partnerships or whether they were benefiting from a weak market?
I would assume so, probably so. And again, depending on the type of freight you're moving, right? That's always a part of this discussion. But I think I do think this is where we'll learn a little bit of that. I also find it interesting because I think Kevin Hill had put out the numbers for brokerages, and they're starting to grow back, right? We saw that huge fall off. And that's interesting to me. Like, what are those people bringing into this market? What are they doing differently? Because I always kind of ask myself, if I started a freight brokerage today, like, what would that business model look like? So I am interested in seeing that tick up. Like, have they strategized? Have they just entered the market, kind of like we saw with carriers, right? Oh, I'll buy a truck, I'll do this thing, having no idea. Or are they people who waited for this moment and strategically came in and with a different business model that could really help even or hurt even more some of the brokers that have figured out the last couple of years and survived this? So I think I think we are going to learn, right? If those carriers were truly there because they like your offering as a company. And when I say offering, like I'm talking everything from how I'm getting loads from you, how you're tendering loads over to me, how you're paying me, the whole encompass of it all, right? Or were they just coming to you because you had the rate and the load there? So yeah, I think we will see people learn from this, and clearly, I think personally, I think we'll probably see the bigger players win a little bit more in that space, especially I think the ones that have done a better job at like trying to figure out their capacity where it's at, and those who are just posting and figuring it out are really going to struggle.
Yeah, the post and pray. So I think, to Kevin's point, I'm wondering how many of those brokerages are people who are no longer at a larger brokerage. So
like an agent or something too. Yeah.
Yep, and then they just decide to go pop their own MC and go. The barrier to entry for a brokerage is really small. So, I watch and I only pay much attention to those that have 10 or more people in them. So,
yeah,
which there's not a huge number of those, but so seeing a single brokerage come up. Other than that, you're kind of wondering on the fraud side if there's anything happening. But ultimately, I think there's enough shifting in the market that we might just be seeing folks no longer have a job start their own shop. So I think that's very viable. For people running brokerages right now, what's more dangerous? Taking this slowly and seeing what the market shifts, or overreacting?
What would be overreacting to you? It's like firing a bunch of people and thinking it's going bad. I would say
all of the above.
All of the above, yeah. I think going back to kind of the first question, I think if you're using your tools and you're watching your capacity and using this time to truly figure out where you are advantageous as a business, and then finding ways to capitalize off those lanes, I think it would be very smart, right? And I think of technologies like it's now Triumph, but like ISO and things like that, where you can sit and say, okay, listen, because I would assume in this type of market, if I'm a broker, I want to know where I'm good. And right. I want my sales team to hit that and hit that only. I mean, if you have sales reps right now, like calling the worst markets, like I would be really, those who aren't watching, like where your reps are calling, where they're trying to find shippers, because I would assume shippers are looking for help right now if we continue to see these conditions. So do you have the tools to tell those on the shipper side of doing outreach where you're winning and winning well? Or are you just, again, like you said, scrambling and trying to find like the next lane that's going to like help your business grow? Sure. And I think those who say, what do we do well? How do we capitalize that? How do we push that? Whether it's like a region or a lane or a trailer type, push that out into the market so that shippers can find you better. That's going to be a bigger win than, oh my God, kind of, I think sometimes people panic and it's just like find as many loads as possible so that we can have, something to give these carriers and figure that out too. Like, I think it's smart to figure out your lane and stick to it during these times until we figure out why this market is behaving the way it is.
Make adjustments as you have to, but find your power and stick with it. So, capacity is the play. So in an up market, in a carrier market, it's all about capacity. So if you're not doubling that down, you should be. So
it's 100%.
So all right. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on. Last time I saw you, that was Manifest, I guess, and then we were in New Orleans together, but we didn't.
Yeah.
We saw each other in passing a bunch of times and sat down and talked, I think, at the conference. But so Matt's, last year we did a dinner at Matt's. we should do that again. So, but this time we'll schedule ahead of time and get a nicer restaurant. So I'll reach out to you on that. So, where can people find you if they want to reach out, or what's your
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, on all the socials. I hate saying it. It's like Google Grace Sharkey, it'll pop up. I hate saying that. What a big head, but it's true. I mean,
that's something we didn't get into. Talking about how, I mean, we were doing some research on using ChatGPT, and our marketing director, it popped up as you as a reference. Not anyone else, just transportation voices such as Grace Sharkey. So
perfect.
So good.
So ask ChatGPT. I'm in there. It'll connect you. But go check out Orderful, orderful.com. Check out our YouTube page. We have a podcast as well and a bunch of manifest interviews we're pushing out over the next couple months. So yeah, and then thank you for having me on the show. It was a great time, and
yeah, as always, I appreciate it, and we'll set up another one in 6 or 9 months again. So, or if you need to come on, just let me know. So,
love it.
But appreciate you. Thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks, Nate. Talk to you soon.
All right. So that's a wrap for today's episode. Big thanks to Grace Sharkey for coming on and saying out loud what this industry feels, but doesn't always want to admit. So freight is changing again, and a whole lot of companies got a little too comfortable in the soft market. And that sounds strange when I was thinking through that. That sounds strange to say, but we were so normal for so long. I think that's where I say things got comfortable, because this was the down market that we were in. And now that's potentially changing. So technology matters, visibility matters, EDI matters, but let's be honest, none of it saves you if your people don't know how to operate it when the pressure hits. So this next chapter is going to expose who built real relationships, who actually knows how to sell, and who was just riding the easy conditions. Once again, it was difficult, but it was normal. So those were consistent conditions. So carriers are hopefully done bleeding. It'll take us a while to pull all the way out of that, but hopefully we're getting there. We're still going to see a difficult year, but we see that we're climbing out. So brokers are going to start feeling the squeeze, and shippers may not like how fast this ends up resetting. We don't know yet, but it could flip on a dime somewhere down the road. We just saw fuel jump $1 in a week. So if this conversation hits home, share it with your team, especially the ones who think the old playbook still works, because it doesn't. We'll see you next time. Stay curious, stay informed, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Until next time, drive forward with purpose and innovation. Thanks for watching.